Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald! Around the body. Jazz up! He's off!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. Fuck! I can't believe it.
Good time of day, and welcome to episode number 240 of Americans Watching the Footy. I am Benjamin Castle. I'm Ethan Castle, and we are both in South San Francisco, California. We're actually recording this in the waning hours of my 25th birthday. Back home very briefly. By the time you're hearing this, I'll be back in San Diego, having started my summer term, but nice to be home for a bit to see Ethan, parents, Brian Harambe, our executive producer, who is in the room with us. This is the round 12 progress reports. Both sound good. You know, if pro is the opposite of con, what's the opposite of progress? It's overdone to the point that Family Guy did it and made Joe totally obnoxious while doing it multiple times. Oh no, I like when they made Joe this like weird guy who tries to make, topical commentary and nobody gets it or likes it. I think it's fun. It ends up just looking socially awkward. Yes, it's fun. Like Joe being this lame guy that nobody wants to be around it's a fun character development thing. Have they kind of saved his character with that? I don't know. I think they could still do without him. No, the one they could do without is Chris. Why would you say that? You know what we should have had happen tonight when we went out for dinner? What? Should have had like a happy birthday sing-along thing at the table. Well, that's what happens when we don't go to Clappy's.
H!
Well, but not just that, but like any, like a TGI Fridays type place that actually does that. Yeah, we went to a pretty nice Burmese place. So yes, we are physically in the same place for now. First bye round, 4 teams were off. Only one of them is in the 8 currently, but I think they've all given us a good bit of talking points. 3 of them wear blue, and the other has teal. Double D? Maybe. Spinning the wheel because randomness is a good thing sometimes. We'll be starting with the non-blue one. All right, we're talking about Port. I think the best way to start this is kind of where we left off with them last time. After round 11, Max Lawton's 3-word analysis. Sometimes it's whatever. I don't care a lot about it, but I think this one was actually like super on point. Sliding into irrelevancy. And I think that sucks. Since the start of our footy journeys, the entire Port Adelaide Football Club has been pretty significant characters. And watching the Geelong game there, granted Port were ravaged by injuries, but it was, it was a flat crowd. It was like the only time it feels like the crowd had been up for them was Showdown, and they lost that. And yeah, it was just like, I don't want them to be irrelevant. Even if you don't want them to be good, I mean, they're relevant because they're going to be talked about plain and simple. And with this being Hinckley's last year and the coaching handover, that's going to be a topic. I was just like, should the succession plan have happened in the first place? Might Josh Carr be a Gerard Mayo type fall guy? I forget which, was it Nathan Buckley or who said that maybe like, if Hinckley feels they're totally done, he'll step aside, kind of like Clarkson did a few years ago. Well, Clarkson, he was like sick of how the club was going about the whole thing, and he left a year early. This would be different leaving within the season. But they're currently 4-7 in 15th. 79.1% is the 15th best, 4th worst percentage in the league. But yeah, this is a team that I still believe has the firepower and the core to do special things. This year does seem like it's trending towards lost cause, but I will never doubt the ability of a midfield of Butters, Wines, Rosie, and the horny one.
Here he is again, the horny one!
Although Rosie's kind of playing this halfback role where he gets a bunch of possessions and a showdown medal that he probably didn't deserve. He had started halfback really well. I mean, he played most of his junior footy at halfback, won a sample premiership as a halfback prospect. And those first couple games there, which I believe Port won, were like, oh, wow, this is really working. But that was also when Horn Francis was still healthy. He's got a couple weeks still before he's back from his hamstring at minimum. He also had Willem Drew really staying with it, and he'd regressed over the past couple weeks too. They moved around a few pieces. Miles Bergman with steadier midfield time has been good, but is he even going to be around next year? That would be honestly a pretty devastating piece to lose, and I don't think a lot of people realize just how important Bergman has been to this team. Now, what I don't think has hurt them much is Dan Houston's departure, because it's a little bit more evident with Kane Farrell out, but with him, the combination of him and Ryan Burton kind of cover a lot of length through the corridor. Well, Rosie was able to do that too. Rosie was more run as opposed to actual kicking, and Bergman and Burgoyne had done that as well. Kane Farrell being out has definitely put a magnifying glass on Jace Burgoyne in mostly positive ways, even though I would rather him not have to stick around the defensive 50 as much. No, the pieces are there, but health has been a problem this year, obviously, with Horn Francis and Farrell missing time. Still a couple weeks at least for Jack Lukosius. I look forward to him being back. I want to see how he could open things up. Does he go forward again? And I wonder also just if Josh Carr does start to get some of the reins behind the scenes, do they switch around Lukosius' positioning, because he's shown his versatility. Just put him forward when you play Geelong. I still believe that they also probably have something that can at least qualify as a premiership defense. Is Asava amazing? No, but number 2 to Alir, that's pretty solid. You combine that with a healthy Brandon Zerk-Thatcher, who was solid in that loss to Freo before their bye. Was that Zerk-Thatcher's first game of the year? I think, yeah, because we've seen Zerk-Thatcher and Radagalea missing time, that we really don't know how that second and third tall situation works. Just if Zerk-Thatcher isn't the main guy, he's usually all right. I just want to see more of him and Alir working together still. Yeah, hot take. AFL Paradise on Instagram gave the Crows a 20% chance to win or I guess this is through player ratings, gave the Crows a 20% chance to win the flag. I will still take Port's actual defensive group over the Crows. And I like Worrell and Michael Laney, and Marquine as of late too. Yeah. I mean, if Keane plays like this, it gives you some pause, but overall, I will take Port's defense out of the two Adelaide teams. At the same time, you have a couple of games that, you can shrug off, the Geelong margin with injuries. The Bulldogs loss in Ballarat, that was ugly. I think the ones that give you more concern is that Essendon loss and that home loss to the Saints. That's what really paints a grim picture to me. And he had a decent record against the Saints before that, too, including in Victoria. That's not one they'll be able to get revenge on, unfortunately. They do have one double up that they've yet to play at all, and that's Carlton. And that's been a pretty competitive double up. For example, last year I remember those pretty well. And if the Power have any say in September whatsoever, other than spoiling it for others, round 16, hosting the Blues is going to be crucial there. I think they have 3 home games in a row after they go to Canberra for Saturday night. 3 home games in a row against Melbourne, Sydney, and Carlton. At some point at that stage, you could probably be able to put a line through them if they drop at least 2 of those 4. It's annoying to me the way the schedule lined up, where it really didn't work for me to go to one of their actual home games. I mean, I'm going to Showdown. I have my ticket. It is a Crows home game. One of the Crows fans I was talking with said, the crowd's way more hostile at Port's version. And this was, again, from a Crows fan, which, that checks out. I think some of our favorite crowd-watching moments on the broadcast have been Port. Oh, easily. But they technically have this stretch of 3 away games in a row, rounds 19 through 21. Hawthorn in Tasmania, then they don't have to travel, but it's their road showdown, and then they come to Geelong. By virtue of their second place finish last year, they've gotten one of the toughest schedules in the AFL, and it's been easy for them to be exposed at times. I mean, some of it's aged better, you don't complain as much about doubling up with Swans at this point. That 8-point win at Sydney was one of the higher points, and where we saw some of the rosy halfback stuff going on. There is still a path for this team to get to 13 wins. Whether or not that's enough for finals is...
13! 13!
The thing is, there's very little margin for error at this point if you're asking them to go 9-3 the rest of the way. And I don't think there's any reason to believe they're going to go 9-3. Now, they were dealt a tough hand from the start with injuries. You know, Todd Marshall doing his ACL before the season, or was it Achilles? It was one of those two. Achilles. Maybe that was just a sign it's not going to be your year. But, like, it shouldn't be this bad. I just want to see the difference between this year and next if Josh Carr actually is from a sort of different coaching mold, or if him being in Hinckley's system too long means same shit, different coach. I'm just thinking about that tweet that we saw. I forget who posted about what was like every time that the cameras cut to Dean Cox, it's like trying to tell you, don't be a coach. This is a pained existence. Dean Cox just looks miserable every game. We'll talk about this more in our like round recap. Our sleeper picks for Port this year, by the way, yours has kind of vanished as of late, and that's been part of the problem because the past couple games have been crying out for more of Ollie Lord. Yeah, he's been like invisible lately. Especially with Marshall having been out. Yes, the void left by Charlie Dixon's retirement and Jeremy Finlayson doing some in the back when he's been in. You were hoping for more from Lord this year, and as of now, it has not eventuated. Amazingly, his 7 goals puts him that tied for 6th on the team, which is not great. I mean, there are times when Lord has shown some promise, just these last couple games, not good. And this is a team that is currently on a 4-game losing streak, 3 of which were not close. My sleeper pick was Josh Sin. He's been hurt as of late. Knew that he would get some more visible halfback and wing time with Houston being out and other players being rotated. He's also had some games where he's kind of vanished lately. Yeah, I'm not entirely positive about Sin. Don't think he's really risen above prior expectations. Definitely been more highlighted. We can't go through this without talking about Willie Rioli because he's probably the main character for 2025 as of now. Yeah, I'd say so. When he's in, you know how effective he can be. He's been getting some midfield split that's been effective. That has started to happen more with Rosie getting more of that halfback time. You saw Willie rotate into some center bounces and make some impact there. Currently 15 goals, 7 and 9 assists out of 10 games. If Port can go anywhere this year, he's got to be on the oval for it. Yeah, I'm just surprised that so far, and granted it's only been like 2 games, we haven't seen anyone really get under his skin or really work to. You would think it'll happen at some point. He's kind of made himself an easy target. Are teams like worried that it could be like misconstrued as something racial? I don't know. That's not impossible, but looking at this team as a whole, I think they're missing something, whether that be, the obvious hole at tall forward. Like you look at the first half of that Frio game and Jeremy Finlayson was having some good moments. And I think they need something like that out of him or Jack Lukosius. More consistency out of Sam Powell-Pepper, even he's fallen off the past couple. And it's also kind of just a weird ruck situation where Jordan Sweet, it seemed like a bit of an impulsive drop, and Dante Vicentini's just been I mean, he's been up against tough competition, but I've been truly surprised that Vicentini had stayed in 3 games in a row, and I don't think Sweet had warranted being dropped like that. And not entirely coincidental, I'd say, that they're 0-3. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say it's Vicentini that's the main problem, but you would expect that switch back to Sweet would be made. I don't know. And then you also have the fact that Ivan Soldo just kind of doesn't exist. He's had like a couple bad games and hardly played, and we've hardly seen him, which is unfortunate. I mean, it's not like Port really wanted him back, but then he was back and you thought he'd be used more, and you thought that he could maybe help with some of the forward situation too. And it just hasn't happened, unfortunately. Let's keep spinning the wheel. Let's keep this moving, yeah? What goes up must come down. Spinning wheel, got to go around. I don't get it, and I don't care. Blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah, I would not have known that. Dad and I are suckers for 70s music. And here are the Old Dark Navy Blues. Where to begin with Carlton? We can begin with the raw numbers. They slipped to 13th during their bye. Like Port, they're at 4-7, but the percentage is strong, 102.8. And because they're Carlton, they'll still be in plenty of magnified games, including the King's Birthday Eve Sunday night footy right out of the bye against Essendon. also known as the Trophy Circle game.
The Circle of 32, yes.
I really think Gold Coast and Frio should do a version of that.
They have a couple other primetime games later on. Obviously, they've got Carcol, round 17.
They've also got a pretty favorable draw in stretches, at least these next few weeks. No easy trip to Perth, but it's still the Eagles. Host North at the G. Did you know, and this ties into our remaining teams, you know North has more games at the G this year than the Bulldogs?
They do?
3-2.
And North has won at the G.
But yeah, after that, then you have at Port on a Thursday, Collingwood Friday, host Brisbane on a Thursday. You've got a pretty lanky stretch where you don't leave Melbourne. I think it's, 4 games in a row. We'll see probably a healthier Hawthorn by round 20, another trip to Perth to face Freo, host the Suns, host Port, and finish with Essendon. They could easily be 7-7, and I would assume that their fans realize the importance of this game against Essendon. Because if you win this, you're in position to do some good things with playing West Coast and North back-to-back for the second time, which is just kind of crazy, by the way.
Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
To have the same back-to-back twice, and it's teams that teams that you don't mind facing.
And then that round 16 encounter at Port. Huge game for both, as we just mentioned. At that point of the season, you hear people talk about, this is an early elimination final. Maybe it won't be quite that severe by round 16, but the vibes will be there.
Carlton, Pete Cripps, 3 votes. I was going to talk about this. We did not rate Patrick Cripps last season anywhere near as highly as the umpires. In fact, I think most Carlton fans didn't even have him getting what was it, 45 votes or something insane?
45 is the correct number. What do we have him getting?
Something in the mid-20s, and I would have understood something in the mid-30s.
I mean, we understood him as a candidate to win.
Oh, yeah, but it shouldn't have been if we're just going off of number of votes, they're oh my God, it's the greatest season anyone's ever had. It's I'm sorry? And I think he's been fine this year. He has not been up to the standard he was last year. He's still been a very good contested player, and he's got the strength to go forward. I love when he goes forward, actually, not that they often need him to.
I like when he does it to break tags. You saw that the Giants had to shift a lot of their strategy because he brought Toby Bedford to the goal square, ended up having to break that tag and shift some of their other matchups to hold Cripps accountable wherever he went. So throwing Cripps forward and making him back goal square forward can throw a wrench into a lot of defensive plans. For that alone, it's good, especially when you haven't seen Harry Mackay getting closer marks as frequently.
Well, I actually thought the Giants game was a really good look at how to effectively tag him even when he's having a good day. And it was fine, you can get all sorts of contested possessions right off the bounce, but you're not going to get a lot of clearances out of it. And we're going to limit you to those. 20 contested at 64% efficiency, great. But Bedford was able to limit him to 4 score involvements and 1 intercept, which is tremendous work. I don't know how much of this was by design and how much of it was just we've got to find a way to keep him under control when he's still having a good day, but there are ways to stop him even when he's having his best day. And do you want me to spice this up a little? I will say this because they're compared so regularly, even though they're totally different players. I don't think you can stop Nick Dacos's impact when he's playing his absolute best game. That's all I'm going with there. But just the bigger picture thing here is
you can stop Patrick Cripps from impacting games even when he's at his best. Much more than you can, for example, Nick Dacos.
You can limit the impact. You can't completely stop it. That loss to the Giants going into the bye was really the first poor game George Hewitt's had all year, and it was a down game for Jacob Wiedering as well. And those two have been among the most consistent pieces. Wiedering less surprising. Hewitt's been terrific.
Wiedering is always going to be magnified, and even more so this year when he's been without Nick Newman. I think we've kind of forgotten about that in our analysis, that the Blues are without, he's been top 3 best in Ferris these past couple of years, even as he's going toward the end of his career. That player who often Wiedering would let be the distributor out of defense. So if Wiedering's struggles are more magnified, whether defensively or rebounding, a lot of it might be because Newman isn't there with him.
This is also a team that, depth has been, what a surprise, depth has been a concern. I think Lockie Fogarty's shown decent form, but Lockie Cowan, Jesse Mottlock, iffy at best. Blake Akers has turned it around lately. That's good. But
weird sub out in the last.
That didn't make sense to me. And then You're still trying to figure out something out of like, I don't know, Jackson Binns, and just this team is in a weird spot. I do like a couple of the younger pieces in Cooper Lord and Will White. Those two look like legitimate AFL quality players.
White was played into form pretty early against some pretty bad teams, and so definitely got a jump start from that. Lord, I think, might have had his best game yet, actually, against the Giants this past round. It's a shame for his sake and the Blues' sake that they had to immediately put that on ice and go on the bye. Lord with a goal from 21, 4 clearances, and 4 tackles in that last game. And I hope to see more of him, more active over the full length of the oval. You know, as you see players like Dockery on their way out, you need to see some of the young guys like Lord stretching the oval more. You were talking about Motlop. More consistency out of either Motlop or Corey Durden would go a long way, because Durden had that burst. He had 9 goals in 4 games and has been held very quiet since.
I still like Motlop potential a lot more, but he hasn't given too many reasons to believe in him this year.
I was hoping also for Ashton Moyer to get some more time, not just because he's my sleeper, but he could play both smaller and bigger roles, but we haven't seen much out of him this year. Just that one game where he only got 2 touches was a sub against Collingwood in round 4.
When you look at the season this team has had, and you look at the individual performances, it doesn't really make you think, oh yeah, this team's 4-7. I mean, the percentage obviously implies that as well, but like, I don't think they're that bad.
I mean, they've had 4 of their losses that have been within 3 goals. Those being Richmond round 1.
That was hysterical.
The Bulldogs round 3.
They blew that one.
Collingwood round 4.
That one wasn't that close. That one was actually one of their worst performances. That was ugly.
True. Just the scoreline's going to be close no matter what whether or not the game's good most of the time. And then, yes, they got outplayed in the Marngrook game round 10 because Sydney has a very good track record in the Marngrook game.
They never win at the SCG. They never win at the Adelaide Oval. But like, you look at some of the games they led at halftime and then really blew. And I think they're getting to a point where they're moving past that. But then you had this GWS loss. I'm just at the point where the Giants are now appointment viewing because I have no idea what they're going to give me week to week, opponent to opponent. I don't know what they're going to do.
The Blues led parts of the first quarter and then never did again. And that was a game that was bookended by really strong Toby Green quarters. We highlighted some of the younger players for poor performances in that one. If you're going to see Harry O'Farrell again out of the bye, let's see if he can get a run of a couple of good games in a row, maybe. Time for Matt Carroll to step up again too. Durden we mentioned already. We look a lot at like one-on-ones and individuals here. Just like, is there something stylistic that is causing Carlton to lose all of these leads? I can't really see like one exact thing that they're lacking other than like certain depth, that certain like late game factor. It's hard to put a figure on what exactly it is.
Again, I can chalk this GWS game up to just guys that have been good for them most of the year weren't good in this game.
I'll include Tom DeConing in that too, because he was starting that game pretty well, and then Kieran Briggs got the better of him. DeConing is one, obviously. That is a top point of conversation for the Blues and the potential ruck carousel around the league.
I think Tom DeConing is a pick if Carlton stay relevant the rest of the year. Like, well, I mean, they're always relevant, but if they stay competitive, to be a main character for the entire season. But you know who I was really liking before he got hurt that could be back shortly after the bye was Jack Silvani.
I mean, especially once Brody Kemp went down, you had Silvani play both 50s as a taller mark there.
Defensively, this team has gotten better, and then you had the stinker against GWS because before that, the only team to get to triple digits on them at all was the Crows, who are a very good offense. And that was at the Adelaide Oval, and the Blues played like shit.
Silvani is the one that could help people forget that Nick Newman is out, I'll say.
This team is averaging a little under 81 points a game, and that's with putting 153 on North and 121 on West Coast. So you take out those 2 games,
and they're averaging
68 in the third.
Not even nice.
With that midfield and that forward talent, that is really concerning. Now, you can throw a couple of outliers. You can say, all right, they still got the 77 against Ross Lyon. The Collingwood game, as ugly as it was, the weather didn't help, but still, like, 69 against Richmond. That was also a Ben Miller masterpiece. 60 against Hawthorn, who's pretty fast-paced. 75 against the Dogs. 94 against Geelong, one of their best performances. 62 at Sydney. 82 against GWS.
It's a physical enough team, especially with Cripps leading it and Hewitt doing the grunt work in the middle, that you would expect them to be able to kind of brute force their way through at times. When Sam Walsh has been on, his speed has been a big factor.
Sam Walsh has been just decent this year. He hasn't been anything outstanding.
When he's been on, it's been the speed that has mattered a lot. And inability for them to really mix the physical and the speed together. They can get exposed on rebounds pretty easily. The Giants definitely took advantage of that.
The defense has been sharp. Like Nick Haynes was miserably bad his first couple games and now just looks good.
It's something missing there, I think, defensively in the midfield. Because that back line has been consistently under pressure. That's why Haynes has been more magnified. That's why part of why Wiedering was so down is because he was going up against so many repeat entries and fast rebounds.
Also, Mitch McGovern, who looked completely finished at the start of the year, has looked significantly better. They have given up the third fewest points. Only teams to concede less are the Suns and Pies.
Even still, it's a matter of stopping rebounds, being able to play full four-quarter games in the middle and restricting movement. Because there are times where it just all breaks down. You wonder, how is this happening to Carlton?
I think the best way I can sum up my concerns with them is, will the expected positive regression from some of their core offset the expected negative regression from the guys who have been pleasant surprises?
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did. How did you know that number, Ethan? Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters. Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed. It's so easy you can edit it while drunk. And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do. Best of all, it's completely free. Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
Welcome back to episode 240 of Americans Watching the Footy. We are both live in South San Francisco. I'm Ethan Castle. I'm on Twitter at Castle Media. He's Benjamin Castle. He's on Twitter at BenjaminHK01. Collectively, we are at Americans Footy on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube.
We just posted, or I really just posted on there, Ethan's Footy pilgrimage schedule to Instagram as well. It's been pinned on Twitter for a bit. If you have touristy or food recommendations for him, and eventually for me when I make my pilgrimage, hopefully in a couple of years, let us know.
Ryan Harambe is chilling in the windowsill. He is on Instagram, a cat named Brian.
No isometric exercise for him this time.
That's what you think.
Not going to disturb him. We found out, by the way, during the break from this, that Ollie Wines is considering a second surgery to deal with his atrial fibrillation. It caused him to be subbed out of the game earlier this year.
Like I said, it seems like something that has been manageable. Sort of like, I'm sure diabetes used to be far less manageable. And, if it can become something that instead of having to be mindful of at all, it could be something that's not even part of the equation, that would be great.
And Wines had been one of their best players these past couple weeks too, a bit more of a midfield split. That's been necessary with Drew being down and also Rosie having stayed more at halfback. And yeah, we like highlighting the sleeper picks, as we mentioned, just guys who wouldn't normally get as much attention, the fringe guys. Who was yours for Carlton, by the way?
Billy Wilson, who has yet to get an AFL game, looks like he should play for Geelong. Hope he gets his chance.
I mean, they might not be worthy like a full episode or a full breakdown like Fred from SpongeBob, the one who always would say, "My leg!" and eventually had a whole episode about him, but
one of the few good, more recent SpongeBob episodes.
We want to highlight the guys that you wouldn't normally think about. By comparison for SpongeBob, I want to know more about the insecurities of Frank the Muscular Goldfish, who is known for, "I gotta get out of here," and Gold team rules.
I want to know about the guy who goes, I can explain. Well, I'd love to hear his explanation.
He's like tricycle while like licking.
He's got like a giant lollipop or something.
One of the times he was just like sitting there in this house like that. And I want to know just like, yeah, what is the explanation? Yes, it was a lollipop and also like one of those ping pong paddle toys.
Awesome. Yeah, it's like, I want the explanation.
I can explain. 2 teams to go here in our first progress report of 2025, which, yes, is funnier than 2024. There's going to be blue and white in here regardless, and it's going to be the Bulldogs up next. The Bulldogs, I mean, we left off, our last recap of them was saying they're always in their own kind of category apart from everything else, and I think this year, more than the past few, we've seen the right pieces be in the right spots more often. And that's despite what they've been losing, despite having missed some key midfield pieces at the start of the year. I mean, that opened up so many opportunities for Matt Kennedy to shine at the source right away, and he's certainly done that. And Richards, we've seen him changing angles like we know he could, but without Bontempelli in there and without Treloar, his role has been perhaps as magnified as ever, and it's been fun to see everybody else realize it too.
We are once again re-entering a sphere of a lot of weeknight Bulldogs, buddy. They played a Thursday before the bye. They've got back-to-back Thursdays coming out of the bye, then a Sunday, but then a Friday, then another Thursday. They've got another Friday round 19 and round 20, a Thursday round 21. So get used to that. And I mean, it makes sense. They're an exciting team. Most of their games are very competitive. A couple have been blowouts, but most have been very competitive. Like John Ralph and Harold Sun was saying, this should be a team that's in line for, a bunch more Thursday and Friday games, a lot of primetime action, and they are. So we will be talking about them a bunch. It is pretty amazing. As much as I love the pieces and the way they fit together, and I think Luke Beveridge has done a largely good job this year, they still find themselves in a similar position to always because they're just kind of stuck. Like 2 and 3 after 5 rounds seems to just be their fate.
6 and 5 currently, dropped out of the 8 during their bye.
But if you did it on like a points per game basis, they'd be
right with it. And they're going to be up against a struggling Hawks team out of the bye, and a Hawks team that will be without James Sicily.
No Will Day still, no James Sicily. This is a chance to pick them apart, and I would love to see them do some picking apart.
And they also have the 4th best percentage, 126.5. They've been able to put on some beatdowns. They beat the Saints by 71, the Power by 90 in Ballarat, Essendon by 91. And all 5 of their losses have been within 4 goals, none by more than 21.
21?
And it's not like they've lost to bad teams, really. I mean, the loss at home against Freo seems like an anomaly, but Freo are another one that have a high ceiling. The other losses, I mean, Collingwood by 6. That was a pretty memorable one where you could argue about umpires, but the right team still won. Brisbane by 21 was in.
Gather round.
Gold Coast in Darwin because Gold Coast did Darwin. And hell of a round 11 opener against Geelong that I am having fun going back through to try and finalize my votes. The Dogs' speed and Richards' ability to accelerate play was more like down the line in that game, and you knew that was going to be the case because of a narrow ground like Cardinia Park. I think that's why the Dogs can excel there, because they have a lot of capable straight line players.
They can go right through the corridor. I mean, this isn't a team devoid of wing players, even though they've largely taken James Harms out of a wing role.
No, and into a forward spot where he's put up a couple decent showings. I mean, no real bags, but he did kick 4. And despite what they've been missing this year in Cody Waitman, they've had plenty of small scorers. I mean, Harms would be on the smaller side, but Latham Vandermeer doesn't need many touches to really impact things. And I know you're going to talk about him, and I love how he's played too this past year and a half. Riley West. He's done less of the defensive forward stuff. He's just been closer to goal and has been getting on the end of more things. West currently is the co-leader in goals for the Bulldogs, actually at 19. His career high is 25, and that was last year. 19 and 10 assists. We're going to totally blaze past his career highs and keep getting better as he nears his 25th birthday. This is a super dangerous and loaded team, even with some of the injuries they've had. Cody Waitman's not going to get a game this year. Aaron Naughton's been up and down. Sam Darcy's been hurt, and Riley Garcia's hardly gotten any time and now is hurt, and it just hasn't mattered because these guys are loaded. They still do a couple of kind of puzzling things, like Caleb Poulter gets in, plays a really good game, and then isn't heard from again. But this team is stacked, and unlike a lot of years when I think they've underachieved, I think they've had very little agency in where they are right now. Running into teams at the wrong time, running into Collingwood while you're getting ravaged by injuries and still nearly beating them, running into Geelong with Jeremy Cameron on fire, going out to Freo on a day when the Dockers were just really good.
This feels like a told you so year as of now, though, for the likes of not just Kennedy, but Riley Sanders. You've been saying it for a while for him, and we've been seeing it.
He's faded a little bit the last couple of weeks, which is, to be expected with a younger player as the season goes on.
Still averaging over 20 a game and liking what he's been doing. And we were wondering why they were persisting with Joel Frazier in the middle, maybe back of the center square, and that's also working. The development seems to be going all right. Would love for Sam Davidson to be able to bounce back too after a few down games, because really he's been the one that's been tried and tested on the wing the most. I mean, he's kicked 4 goals in his past 3 games. I can't really fault him for anything he's done. It's just we haven't seen the highs of his performances against, say, the Blues in round 3 again yet.
I like the way he's building. I think Josh Dolan probably isn't all the way there yet, but I like his upside too. I like what Buku Kamas has done as a forward. Friend of the show, James O'Donnell has been solid enough to keep him in there. There are a couple games where I've really liked him, and a couple where I still question him drawing some of the top defensive assignments.
Yeah, you started the year with O'Donnell forward and Kamas back, and then they said about a month ago, they put their thing down, flipped it, and reversed it. And both players have been better for it since. Oh, right. Gotta mention, James O'Donnell we call Beast, because similar to James Donaldson.
Mr. Breast, give me money. He doesn't quite look like him, though, unlike the guy from Jelly House.
They've been giving O'Donnell more prominent matchups, despite Rory Lobb also being there, and even with Liam Jones being healthy again. I'm still amazed that Lobb in the back has actually worked and that he's become this kind of fun character.
Oh, he's been great.
He has embraced his role, and I enjoy that. When he was most outspoken and doing the most visible stuff with his hair was when they put on their best performances even.
Which, look, if you're gonna be loud and be the center of attention, you gotta play well, and he has done that. Other things I've really liked with this team that I hadn't mentioned yet, Joel Frazier, holy shit.
I mentioned him briefly, just the persistence with him in the middle is paying off, kind of back of the center square. We'd seen what he'd done in halfback, and it's just kind of putting it a little bit further up the ground. Sees kind of the periphery really well.
Last year, when he got his debut, it was really we're debuting him ahead of Jed Bustler, and they knew what they were doing with Frazier. He's cooled off a bit the last couple weeks, but had a couple of absolutely brilliant performances. I think it was, which game was it? Was it the Essendon game? No, it was before that. It was...
He had 2 goals against the Saints that I remember.
I think it was the Saints game where it was unreal. He was pretty good against GWS and Canberra as well.
Dogs have a good track record there.
I will actually see their rematch with GWS at Marvel and possibly a VFL game the next day at Whitten Oval. We'll see. Unfortunately, the VFL schedule isn't great, but I can get in a couple curtain raisers.
The Sydney Derby curtain raiser you told me?
Yes, and then possibly a Sandful curtain raiser for Showdown.
Awesome. My sleeper pick for the Bulldogs was Lockie McNeil, just someone who hasn't really gotten a whole lot of attention these past few years, and he's been solid, but nothing really more than that. He's not going to, burn down any oval. 10 goals this year has been nice, considering they've had 7 with multi-digit goals already. A steady contributor. He'd actually scored a goal in every game he'd played before kicking no goals 2 against Geelong.
My sleeper was Artie Jones. He's played in a couple games, been all right,
and is out for a while with a hamstring.
I think at this point, he's just kind of a periphery guy that maybe if he went to another club would have better opportunities. If he wants to have a chance to be part of a flag-winning team, he's at the right place to do that.
if he expects to be in a grand final team, you'd need a lot of injuries and a lot of things to click. If maybe you think there's a better opportunity elsewhere, like, I don't know, I'm just throwing names out there. Like, I think North is actually not bad on the small forward front right now, but, someone like St. Kilda, there would be opportunities there.
Someone there to have alongside Jack Higgins on the small side would be nice. Were you also kind of mentioning North because they're our last team up?
No, I was just thinking of them as, like with Jacob Constanti and Dylan Stevens, like guys that aren't great, but...
Well, Constanti is definitely the forward one of the two, whereas Stevens still is more of the wing. But yeah, North is up last here. We spun the wheel, as you heard, just because we do. We spin because we care.
It's a nice wheel.
And now we're done with the wheel. North are in 17th at 2-8-1, or maybe as some would say 2-1-8. They were part of the second ever Mother's Day draw, both of which were Brisbane Lions road games these past 2 years. Oh, yeah, and they also beat Melbourne and Richmond. I find it funny just that it was North beating Richmond by like a similar-ish score to what had happened in 2022, actually, yeah?
And I think that one was like 92-88 or something. I don't know.
I remember that one because Dad and I were driving up to Eugene. That was the Jake Arts sold game.
It was 92-88. Good job, Ethan.
And it was 78-74 this time. So a 4-point game both times, I'll say. I mean, that was North's first win of the G since 2017. So there's that. Took a dead-on game from Zerhard to propel that partially. Both times. I'll say it, Tristan Cherry.
Yeah, he's been really good. I think at times he's gotten even more love than he's deserved. I feel like playing against him in a few weeks, I will be able to appreciate him even more.
You're not looking forward to that game.
Well, I know that I'm not going to be watching it live.
Because you'll be at Showdown instead, right? So I'll be covering a Geelong overlay.
We'll figure out how to do things when I'm gone. I'll give you the liberty to choose whatever you want live. Seems like the way to handle that.
It's going to be so fun to compare what you see live compared to what I see from the high up angles and stuff. And we'll start to understand like, oh, this is why the umpires see things the way they do. So that will be incredibly fun. But Jerry's one that just regularly gets ranked up there because sometimes it's hard to spot other better performances for North. And Jerry's just kind of the name at this point. But also when Jerry's been at his best, North has been at their best. You saw it against Brisbane in the draw. You saw it against Richmond in the win.
And
they're throwing hands this week.
This is when they're going to be doing their 2-week Western Australia residency because I don't know why they should be getting a lot more shit for this.
Well, didn't Ross Lyon say when you're selling games, you're not a serious club?
Did he actually say that? And if yes, when?
It was in March.
Ooh.
It's funny because, of course, the Saints did used to sell games.
I still think they should be going to Cairns, but
yeah, I think Hawthorn might end up doing that. They already do it for the women. I wonder if they might consider it for the men starting in 2028.
God, that would be awesome. Like, look, my thing with selling games, I think bringing football to places that don't normally get it is great. I think that giving up a home game to play, even with this one in Bunbury, like, this is cool because it's the first ever game there. I'm excited to see what it will look like. But also, it's going to be like, what % Eagles in the crowd?
80.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas, like, if they went out there and did this against the Saints
and brought teams to Western Australia that don't regularly play there.
Yeah, like, I thought at first it was like, North are going to sell games to Western Australia. Well, what about just like, okay, maybe you'll play against Port there or play against, like, I don't know, play against Richmond there. And it's like, sure, cool. But to turn home games into away games is not cool.
Why would you send a second home game to Western Australia?
Money!
Darn, I thought you were going to say, like, in response to what I said, like, why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
I mean, that too, but also just the entire thing I'm just thinking of is
money!
It's frustrating.
And it is hard to take them as seriously as a result. I mean, I hope, firstly, that they can actually be relevant, and secondly, by the time they're relevant, they're not fucking selling games.
So, if you take out just a couple of particularly bad games, I would have mostly positive things to say about North, although I know their fans are understandably frustrated just because you want to win.
But if you take out that stretch from rounds 4 through 6,
Frankly, I would even exclude the
gather round.
game, which they led in the third quarter before completely falling apart. Really, it's just those two, the Sydney game and the Good Friday game against Carlton.
Win a Good Friday game, please. You're doing such a good job with it off the field. Make it happen on the field. We've said this time and again, we don't need to have the conversation. But no, like, there were a lot of understandable losses, and there are a couple tight ones that just haven't gone your way. Road losses that are understandable in South Australia, and better teams than you, like the Suns and the Pies, cleaning up in the fourth quarter. I mean, it's happened to Richmond too.
My thing is, like, if you're comparing them to West Coast,
I'd more accurately compare them to Richmond.
Or Richmond, I see both West Coast and Richmond with more players that are on the Oval regularly that look like they're going to be part of a contending team.
That is debatable for West Coast, I would say.
But I mean, West Coast, outside of like Liam Duggan and maybe, Bailey Williams, I see a fair amount of guys that look like, even if they turn out to not be good, guys that could be there when the team is good. Maybe some of them end up just not playing up to their ceiling, but like, I can't see Darcy Tucker or Zach Fisher as part of that.
I can't see the kind of stopgap veterans they've brought in too being around for that. I mean, they're good mentor figures to have. Luke Parker is a hell of a mentor figure.
Oh, I have no issue with Luke Parker's presence, and I think he's played quite well.
And Jack Darling actually has stepped up a couple times too, and that's been pleasant as someone who wants him to do well. And
there are times when it's like, I'm shocked at how slow he is.
Yes, he's very slow, and he's like one of the shorter guys that pinch hits as a ruck at this point too. But I have no ill will toward him for what he accomplished with the Eagles and how dedicated he was to that club. And if he can do something to bring up another team at the twilight of his career, that would be cool. I'm happy to see him score. Like, genuinely, not just because I want North to be good.
I understand Caleb Daniels' role. I think Caleb Daniel is very good for where they are right now. He gets to take kick-ins instead of making one of your young guys do that. He's good enough to help you compete, but not good enough to win a lot of games. He's not bad enough to be a tank commander, but he's, he raises the floor a bit and doesn't really raise the ceiling.
And you have been getting games into the younger guys more this year. I mean, Jacob Constanti has had good flashes in his 11 games. He's played all 11 so far. More consistent time out of Zane Dersma would be good. This team looks different in so many better ways when George Wardlaw is in, because he's just willing to take on absolutely anyone.
Tell you whose development I've been happy with this year has been Colby McKercher.
Yes, it's almost modeled like a Shiza-like arc. They gave him all the disposals in the world from halfback, and then they let him loose this year once they showed, okay, you know how to handle the ball back there. What can you do in the forward 2/3 of the oval now?
We're doing a lot less looking at who you could have drafted instead.
It was McKercher and Zane Dersma that came in together, and again, we love the Dersmas. It would be cool to see Willem as an Eagle. I don't want to see more of him, but yeah, I think McKercher and Dersma could turn out to look good. I mean, Sheasel and Wardlaw, it's been up and down for Sheasel this year, but the team has looked much more the part with Wardlaw in there, much more willingness to actually take things on in the middle and let George be the physical specimen that he can be. And we love what he scores because his goal song selection is once again exquisite. If they were a contending team, I bet he'd get a bunch of flack for the media for his goal song or something like that.
But nobody really pays attention to them.
It is hilarious though, just like hype play for George Wardlaw.
I'm starting to like Riley Hardiman as well. I don't think he's great yet, but I like the upside. It's just, I question at this point, what is the ceiling? What does the optimal scenario like 3-4 years from now look like? And I don't know if the teams they're throwing out there right now have enough players that are going to be part of that if you're going to be competing in 3 or 4 years. Now, there are things that are restoring my confidence these last couple weeks, like Charlie Combin looking like an upper tier defender again. He's had a couple of really good games going into the bye. I know he's on the older end, but Luke McDonald, who a couple years ago I thought was just like one of the worst players ever, has totally pulled his act together.
This past week, you saw the return of Paul Curtis from another bullshit suspension.
That was so bad.
1 and an assist from 12, 5 tackles. You can have him play off of a tall like Larky or Jerry, and the other small forwards get less attention when you got to have somebody gravitate more toward Curtis. If you have Curtis and Wardlaw both in there, this team looks much more sensible.
And it also makes sense that that team, with the lack of depth and experience, can still get run over late. Like, it made sense what we saw this past week against Collingwood for more positive reasons, I would say.
To be fair, they could have gotten run over in the third quarter as well if Collingwood had kicked straight.
Actually, we've talked about both of our sleepers already. Yours was Hardiman, and mine was Constanti, so there. I still wish Constanti had managed to kick a goal against the Swans. Had he done that, I legitimately think he would have gone up into the Swans coaching box and finished what he started with Callum Mills.
It was so funny, as bad as that game turned out, they do play again.
That is round 19, and that should be a gorgeous-looking game because it is a Swans home game.
I still think North looked even better with blue numbers. But it was funny, it was like, oh, it's Luke Parker's first game against his old club, and, he gets along with everyone, and here's Jacob Constanti just like in kill everybody mode. It was awesome.
It was like, you guys didn't give me a fucking game? I tore your captain's rotator cuff, and this is how you repay me? Yeah, you tore our captain's rotator cuff, jackass. Are there good stretches for North the rest of the way? I mean, you could tell me that there's any outcome to this Western residency, and I would understand it.
I am tipping the Eagles. Even though I lost my gauntlet a couple weeks ago with Hawthorn's very funny loss to Brisbane.
Basically, I just have mostly picked whoever's playing the Eagles, and I do have North this week in Bunbury, but I'm not so sure about that. This is the first week that I'm sweating things with my gauntlet.
I look forward to watching this, and I look forward to watching you watch this, because we will be, I guess this is the big reveal, in Ohio. And it's going to be starting at 1:20 a.m. there on Sunday.
Yeah, we're going to be watching a lot of this stuff on Eastern time, and there'll be some delay involved potentially too.
No, I didn't think so.
Definitely a lot of later night delirium because it'll be we'll be there in Columbus for our cousin's wedding. And
oh God, I hope you're going to be hammered watching the Eagles. I need to see angry drunk Benjamin yelling at Liam Duggan turnovers.
I've never truly gotten.
I know, we need to fix that. I want to see Liam. I want to play a game where you have to drink on like every Liam Duggan turnover.
Oh, fuck my life.
I want to come up with a drinking game for this. Anyway, as fun as it is to watch this game, I'm more excited to watch you watch it. Like, watching the Mets is fun. Watching Mets fans watch the Mets is way more fun.
Specifically Frank Fleming.
Oh no, any Mets fans. But obviously, Frank Fleming stands out, but Mets fans altogether watching the Mets is good entertainment.
Brian, do you have anything to say? He's sniffing the microphone stand.
I like the way Dylan Stevens has come along lately.
He's done well these past couple games. We considered him for polished turd against Collingwood, and ultimately, I believe we're going with Tristan Jerry for that. He's a good player for where the team is right now, but is lacking that polish and better touch entering the forward 50.
I can't see him as someone who gets delisted in the coming years. I think like worst case scenario, he's, like a somewhere between the 20th and 30th guy.
A semi-frequent sub.
Yeah, could do a lot worse. But like, let's acknowledge, since the absolute shit show of a performance on Good Friday, they gave Port a game. They gave Essendon a game. Granted, Essendon were pretty shredded by injuries by the end of that.
They drew Brisbane. They won against Richmond.
I wish that game was a more fun watch. That was a really tough watch because there were so many fucking whistles.
That was as stoppage-oriented a game as we've ever seen. I believe
it was just not a good viewing experience.
It was like 137, I think. There were more stoppages in the first half than the entire Bulldogs Essendon bashing the night before.
Collingwood, they were good for a half. They hung around, less of their own doing and more Collingwood's doing in the third. And then, the fourth was rough. But they've been in more games at three-quarter time. It's not as fast a development as you'd like to see. And when you compare it, it's the power of expectations and the juxtaposition. Because, you compare it to where Richmond's been, and then you feel like, damn, Richmond's getting this turned around fast.
Richmond also had pieces that they were able to give up and turn really good profits on, and North had fallen off by that point, and they knew that they were going to rebuild it, but they have kind of committed to being gradual. Like, who could you sell off at this point and get that sort of bang for your buck? You really couldn't. You're not going to get rid of Larkey or Simpkin. There's nobody else you'd be willing to part with. Richmond was a different story, and credit to Richmond for doing that. We'll talk about that a lot when we get to the Tigers' progress report, and that will be when they have their bye in round 14. I think we're going to wrap up this one
I enjoy doing these progress reports a lot. Some of this is just more off the cuff, fewer notes, and I think that's enjoyable. Let us know what you think about all this, especially if it's your team. Would love to hear your takes on it. Or if it's not your team, or if you know nothing. I mean, our initial expectation for this was to like help bring more Americans into the game, and then we just got so invested in the analysis that we just kind of went off that path. So if we do have new Americans listening, shoot us any questions you'd like. Our lines are open at Americans Footy on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm at BenjaminHK01 on Twitter.
I'm at Castle Media. Brian Harambe is walking around. He's on Instagram at Cat Named Brian.
And that is episode number 240. At what point do we start getting shared off?
I think 250.
I don't know where we'll be for that one, but we'll try to make it happen. Good time of day.